What's good, YouTube? It's your boy JusticeXFalls. We're back at it again with another video, and today we're looking at Like a Dragon Ishin. It's finally out. It feels like we've been waiting a long time for this one because there hasn't been much coverage on it. This is a remake of a game that came out only in Japan some years ago, and now it's coming out in the States. So it's $59.99. It's for all of the consoles that are out pretty much right now, and it's $70 for the collector's edition, which is one I'm going to get, and it came out today actually. So we're going to check out IGN's review, see what they think about it, and then I'm going to cop the game, and I'm going to add it to the list of games after because after I record this, I'm recording mad gameplays after this, so you're going to see a bunch of videos with me in this sweater, but it's all good. It's about the content, not me. So let's check out the video. So without further ado, let's get to the video.
I had been under the impression that bringing a gun to a knife fight was strictly the Chicago way. But apparently it was the way of the samurai too, at least if the mix of gunslinging and sword swinging in Like a Dragon Ishin is any indication. This 2023 remake of a 2014 Yakuza series spin-off that was previously only available to Japanese audiences transposes the tried and tested street fighting formula from modern Tokyo onto the final days of Japan's Edo period. It suffers somewhat as far as sub-stories and side activities go, with both not quite up to the standard set by subsequent releases, but a card-augmented combat system keeps the fighting fresh, and the crime story plot is packed with more delicious pulp than a nashi pear. Like a Dragon Ishin might not be on the cutting edge of the katana blade, but it rarely strays onto the dull side either.
Yeah, if you've never played any of the Yakuza games or any of the spin-offs or anything like that, you gotta play them, man, because these games are just so over the top and wacky, but at the same time have like a very serious and in-depth story behind them, with very well written, well voice acted, well fleshed out characters. Like it's like no other type of game I've played before, where it's so wacky yet so cohesive and like mature in a sense. Like I've played Judgment, the first one. Amazing game. That's another spin-off in the Yakuza. Amazing game. You play a detective, and a lot of wacky things happen, from the combat to what happens in the side missions and the cutscenes, but it's a very serious story about a serial killer and a corrupt cop. So, like, yeah, I'm looking forward to the story in this as well.
It appears you can take the Yakuza story out of the streets of modern Tokyo, but you can't take the modern gangsters out of the Yakuza story.
Pretty much.
The events of Like a Dragon Ishin may take place in 1860s Kyoto and feature characters loosely based on real historical figures, but most of the roles in its main cast are filled with a host of recognizable faces from other Yakuza games. Thus, its protagonist, Sakamoto Ryoma, a disgraced ronin out to avenge the murder of his mentor, is clearly just series stalwart Kazuma Kiryu, right down to his permanent scowl and unwavering sense of justice.
He does look like Kiryu.
I must admit that even as a longtime fan, it initially got a little confusing when Kazuma Kiryu, playing Sakamoto Ryoma, went undercover as Saito Hajime in order to infiltrate the Shinsengumi police force. Still, my fondness for him helped me buy into his plight almost immediately, and although Ishin's story beats are similar to those featured in several other Yakuza games, setting its figurative and literal backstabbing against the backdrop of a potential Japanese civil war made the stakes feel higher than those surrounding the typical turf battles.
Right.
Unlike
there was a gameplay that I saw of a boss. It was a boss fight, and like it gave a little bit of insight on the story, and it seemed very crazy and high stakes. So he's right about that.
Recent releases from developer Ryoga Gotoku that feature English voice casts, Ishin can only be played with the original Japanese audio.
I'm fine with that.
Yet even with the translated subtitles turned on, there are a great deal of period-specific references to regions, religions, and regiments that I found to be almost impenetrable early on. Constantly pausing dialogue in Ishin's opening hours in order to consult the in-game glossary did upset the rhythm of the storytelling somewhat, but over the course of my 30-hour playtime I learned to distinguish a Goshi from a Joshi, and ultimately came away feeling more enlightened about a crucial period in Japanese history that I previously knew very little about. I was less inspired by the environment itself, however. 19th century Kyoto's woodland surroundings certainly make for a nice change of scenery from the bustling urban jungle of present-day Tokyo, and much like Kamurocho, it's arguably best experienced at night. However, while Ishin's small slice of Japan's original capital city is not without its standout sections, there are still far too many bland backstreets that make navigating your way around a bit less appealing. I found myself far more reliant on the trip-skipping service in Ishin than I ever made use of the taxi services in other Yakuza adventures.
For me, I definitely use the cab a lot. Like once you know the town and you've been through all the back streets, you're gonna start taking the cab, like or the fast travel option in the game. So I don't fully agree with that. Like I feel like every Yakuza game was like that. None of the cities they're very interesting. Don't get me wrong, and there's a lot to do, but none of them are that. These are usually 20 to 40 hour games. So depending on how long you take, but like after a while you get to you recognize the city. You've seen pretty much everything, and you just start taking the cab. So I kind of disagree with that, what he said.
As with any other Yakuza game, the rustic riverside streets aren't just meant for sightseeing, but also fight spreeing. And like a Dragon, Ishin introduces a blend of blades and bullets that makes its combat feel refreshingly distinct from other entries in the series. Ryoma has 4 different fighting stances that you can switch between on the fly, allowing you to go from the smash and bash of the bare-handed brawler technique to the slash and dash of the swordsman style with a tap of the D-pad. They vary in usefulness though, and I found the pistol-only gunman style to be particularly inconsistent in its implementation. It either made life too easy by allowing me to slaughter hallways of sword-swinging enemies before they could get close enough to strike back,
that's kind of cheesy.
Or its fickle auto-targeting would frustratingly force me to shoot at foes in the distance, rather than the warrior in front of me threatening to clean out my ears with a sharpened spear. I found the Wild Dancer style proved to be by far the most fun and reliable combat stance in Like a Dragon Ishin, and thus its skill tree is the one I invested in most heavily. Wild Dancer finds Ryoma at his most fleet-footed, composed of a combination of fast sword slashes and a spinning blast of gunfire that's excellent for crowd control, along with a twirling evade move that can be chained together to pinball him out of harm's way and into a position of power. The fact that its faster attacks come at the cost of it dealing slightly less damage overall made it less effective against the more brutish bosses, but at that point I'd just smoothly switch to the deliberate and powerful swordsman technique and indulge in a more steadily paced samurai showdown.
That kind of seems OP.
While I may have relied on only 2 of the 4 fighting...
That dancing thing, that kind of seems a little OP. They might have to patch that.
...stances available to me for the vast majority of the adventure, they still provided enough variety to entertain. That's particularly when used in tandem with Ishin's unique Trooper card system, which effectively allows for custom support loadouts for each of Ryoma's fighting styles. I enjoyed experimenting with different decks of cards, from the more passive troopers that provide boosts to your attack power and health, to far more outlandish assault cards like a chicken that lays egg-shaped proximity mines.
Wow.
There are hundreds of these trooper cards to uncover in Ishin, and they bring a welcome amount of depth and strategy to what initially seems like a fairly straightforward action game on the surface. And who wouldn't want their own personal attack bear? Ishin gives Ryoma plenty of opportunities to keep his sword sheathed, and one of the more substantial side activities sees him become the caretaker to a small farm in order to support a local orphan. It's a pretty involved process to go from harvesting crops to meeting meal delivery requests by completing simple Cooking Mama style minigames, but I'll be honest, farming simulation is really not for me. If I ever make a stop in Stardew Valley, it will be merely to ask for directions to the nearest highway so I can hightail it out of there. Still, this farm is an entirely optional undertaking, and it certainly provides a more chilled out change of pace to take a sharp blade to radishes instead of Ronins, if that's the sort of thing you're after. Maybe you like cucumbers as much as this lady.
Oh, the length, the shape. Oh, she a freak.
I guess in the 1800s they used actual cucumbers instead of eggplant emojis.
Rare.
Considering I enter each Yakuza adventure with a cocked fist rather than a green thumb, I was far more invested in the 40 different dungeon crawling missions offered at the Shinsengumi barracks. These provide an opportunity for farming of a decidedly more violent variety, running blade first through bandit hideouts in order to scavenge precious materials required to forge more powerful weapons. The reused cave backdrop does start to feel somewhat samey, but the layouts, door switches, and trap and enemy placements are shuffled up consistently enough to make each gauntlet run feel distinct, and I found them highly satisfying to complete. Elsewhere, a lot of the series' side activity staples are present and accounted for, with various types of gambling, karaoke, and dance minigames just a few of the distractions to indulge in. There are some fun, ye-olde Yakuza spins on modern minigames to be found too, but the bulk of these archaic amusements just can't compete with the more dazzling diversions to be found in the contemporary settings of other Yakuza and Judgment games. Trading Club Sega arcades and go-kart races for fishing and wood chopping feels a bit like foregoing a fun night on the town for a sleepy weekend away at your grandparents' place. It's not without its charms, but it doesn't exactly get your heart rate up.
I mean, that's what you play it for, though. Like, if you're a fan of these games, that's what you play it for. Which, you know, the more down to earth segments of the game. It kind of takes your mind off of like all the craziness that's going on in the story. Like, I know I definitely there's a like a Sega arcade inside of Judgment, and I would go there a lot and play the I think it was Virtua Fighter, one of the old Virtua Fighter games. I would play that a lot to take a break from things in the story, but still feel like I was somehow progressing in the game. I don't know, it's weird. It's a weird gamer thing. You wouldn't really understand it unless you're a gamer. Even if you are a gamer, you might not be on that type of timing, but I know some of you understand what I'm talking about. It's like a break while you're still playing the game. So, yeah.
The sub-stories that can be stumbled upon are similarly lacking in any real surprises. In most Yakuza games, you can't make your way from A to B without taking an unexpected detour into WTF territory. But Ishin's sub-stories are mostly more conservative by comparison. Well, aside from the odd offbeat exception. Can someone please get this guy a cucumber? That said, although helping an old lady to find her way home is pretty uneventful, it's still worth doing since Ishin's virtue system rewards you for almost every interaction you have.
Oh, so we're doing all of them.
The virtue points you earn can be spent on everything from upgrading Ryoma's sprinting stamina to expanding the farm. So rarely does any task in Ishin go entirely unrewarded, no matter how innocuous it may seem.
Here we go. What they gonna give it? I think he probably gonna give it a 7 or 8.
While its half-baked gunplay should probably have remained holstered, Like a Dragon, Ishin's stylish sword fighting and over-the-top trooper card attacks successfully pair the Yakuza series' brand of historical action with the historical fiction of its 19th century Japan setting. Unfortunately, its step back in time also presents a slight step down in quality for its sub-stories and side activities, and the blander areas of its low-tech environment can't quite compete with the flashy charms of Kamurocho when it comes to exploration. Even so, its high-stakes story had me hooked throughout, and it was fascinating to get an insight into a period of Japanese history I knew very little about previously, albeit through a heavily fictionalized lens. No matter which way you slice it, Like a Dragon Ishin is an enjoyable and interesting spin-off from the Yakuza series, but not an essential one. For more IGN reviews, check out our verdicts on Hogwarts Legacy and Hi-Fi Rush, and for everything else, stick with IGN.
I like that dancing style. finished them. But this game, I didn't expect it to get anything over a 7 really, because it's just one of those, like, obviously it's a repeated formula as far as like being a part of the Yakuza series and things of that nature. So, there's gonna be some familiarity, and not even just the Yakuza series, just probably other games that you've played throughout your life. This is like very much a like a PS3 or even PS2 era kind of vibe that it's giving, but it's still fun. It's so fun. This is a game from 2014, after all. So there's that. So you got to keep that in mind with these type of games. But these type of games are right up my alley. I like these games where you don't have to worry so much about, I guess, difficulty or strategy. It's just a game. It throws you in a world, and you can get immersed in it however you want. It's not too difficult, but you can make it. I think you can change the difficulty settings. You can make it more difficult if you want. But usually my first playthrough of games, I play it how the developer intended. So whatever the default difficulty is on, that's what I leave it on. So yeah. I like the dancing style. It seems a little OP. They might have to patch that, but they probably won't, just because of how over the top and wacky it is, and just due to the fact that it won't work against everybody. You have to switch up your styles in these type of games, or you're gonna get exposed. But yeah, definitely gonna cop this game after we record our other gameplays that we have to record. I'm not gonna reveal which ones yet. You'll just have to wait and see and look at the channel. So let me know what y'all think about this one though. So you're copping this, or is it a game you're gonna skip? So y'all already know the vibes. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. This is your boy JusticeXFalls. We out.